All right. All right. So thank you for taking the time to sit down with me. I just wanted to ask you kind of a few basic questions, and also because you're one of the only people who has like a public persona that actually knows about selling options, which I'm a big fan of. So
Thank you.
yeah,
Thank you.
yeah. So that's the first thing I really wanted to ask you about is how you got started in this, and did you have any previous training or experience in the stock market?
No. Yeah, no, not at all. When I first started in 2018, I just started buying shares and such. I had no experience in the stock market at all. I was just a guy who had some saved up money and I was a risk taker and I knew what I wanted financially as my goal. So I took the shot, got extremely lucky after about a little bit of that, made a little money, but then my brother introduced me to options in late like 2018. And then that's when I was really like, this is fake. Like this can't be real. So I started off buying options. Hyper successful, hyper lucky, had no idea what I was doing, and then realized I need to switch this shit up because buying options wasn't the vibe long term. I had gotten lucky and I pulled my chips out of the casino when I won on top instead of, going down the hill that unfortunately most traders go down.
Mm-hmm.
And
And
then that's when I made the big switch to options trading, but no training.
okay,
All if I had to call it what it is, I would say it was trial and error with real capital.
got it. And did you? How did you decide that selling options was the way to go?
Selling. So when I went on the search for like different option strategies, I'm a forever student. So I was like, let me find out what I can do that will work. And selling options stuck out to me. Like once I saw a video on how institutional traders sell options and how they use this like passive formula and this delta hedging and all this stuff. And I was like, wait a minute, like these aren't big gains, these are small gains and their returns are astronomical over like a multi-year report. And I was like, what is this? And then I started diving in, and when I realized that you can trade, capped gains for chance of success, and you can have like an 85-90% success rate, and you just need to be able to manage risk on the other losers, I was like, this is where I need to be. Because one thing I've always been good at from my background in law enforcement military is managing risk, right? Like, discipline, risk management, and patience. So if I can apply that to an option selling strategy, I can probably be successful. And here we are 3 years later. They have crowned me the option selling king.
And how did you? So when you're selling options, and I know especially for beginners, they don't totally understand how it's done. So the way that
Yeah.
you do it is through like a sell side strategy, right? Is there certain spreads that you like to use? Like how would you recommend getting
Yeah.
started into it?
Getting starting with option selling, first of all, you have to understand the risk and you have to realize it's not like options buying. So like when you enter a option selling contract, whether it's an option strategy that's a single leg, like a cash secured put or a covered call, or a multiple legged where you're talking about your credit spreads, your iron butterflies, your iron condors, you need to understand the risk involved because most people think that the only money they can lose is what they put in. But the actuality of it when selling is the money you can lose is the collateral needed to enter these trades, which is far more than 100%. You could lose 500, 1,000% on your money in one trade. So I think that's the most important thing. And I'm going to say the line that I feel like I should have this line trademarked. All traders should utilize free resources first.
Yeah.
Go to YouTube, go to Google, don't go to fucking in Instagram or Twitter, maybe if you find like someone legit, but it's tough to prove what's legitimate or not, especially
Yeah.
on social. So I would use Google and YouTube and like go find the education and find out if it's even for you first. That's what all new traders should start with.
Mhm. And when you are doing a sell side strategy, what is
Uh,
do you have a strategy that's kind of like your go-to, that's your favorite kind of spread to trade, or do you do, just the cash secured
if you
puts or
talk, yeah, I do all of them. I do everything option selling. I have a formula. I do mathematical based entries. I just do statistical based entries. I do it all. If I had to choose my favorite one, the most thrilling one is I sell credit spreads on SPX zero DTEs, and of course, who doesn't love a good zero DTE on SPX, whether you're a buyer or a seller?
right?
So That is probably the most fun one. But overall, like covered calls for me has been just like that light bulb moment where I was like, I don't ever have to work again. Like I don't have to do anything because I got lucky once and now I can preserve my wealth and my capital by using this one option strategy that's consistent and it's proven. So I think that one for me is my favorite by far.
Mm-hmm. And with your, I know you mentioned selling SPX 0 days, but
Yeah.
with these other strategies, are they mostly day trades for you, or do you do longer term trading with them too?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I do it all. Yeah, I do it all. So right now as we speak, I'm in a 0 DTE credit spread. I'm in a 1 DTE credit spread. I'm in a weekly credit spread, a monthly credit spread. I'm in cash secured puts on certain individual name stocks like Spirit Airlines and like Robinhood and stuff like that. And I'm selling covered calls on my long term portfolios in my big comfortable stocks that I feel like aren't going to decline too far, bankrupt, slow movers like dividend stocks, but like blue chip companies.
Mm-hmm.
So as we speak, I'm using all four of my option selling strategies that I teach right now at live.
Mm-hmm. And
And so, yeah. So
would you
go ahead.
say the so in terms of defining risk, the thing that I like about using something like a credit spread is that you are defining that risk more because you're opening on either side, you're buying one side, selling the other. Would you say, you know, that is the most advantageous part, or just that selling overall tends to have a better success rate? Like, what would you say is the biggest advantage of using this
Oh,
type of
yeah.
strategy?
By far, the success rate, right? Because we go into the Greeks, we go into the delta. What is the delta? It's the rate of change of the underlying stock per every $1 movement of the underlying stock price. Well, the second part of delta is the chance of success.
Yeah.
If there's a 50 delta on an options contract, that's referring to the chance of going in the money past the individual strike price, right? So when we sell a 10 delta, I have a 90% chance of success. So I know the chance of success, and I know my risk to reward that's in place, and I know my risk management that's in place. There's only going to be two outcomes. It expires worthless, or it hits my stop loss zone. That it
Mm-hmm.
is what it is. But statistically, if I sell that 10 delta 10 times, I might hit 7. I might hit 8, I might hit 9. But if I sell it 1,000 times, statistically, I'm going to have 900 wins. And so I need to just manage that 100 appropriately. And I think it's completely advantageous in understanding that all you need to do is manage the losers and let the winners go. And this is one of the best strategies: teaching patience, teaching confidence, teaching consistency, and actually being profitable. It's a very, very, very high risk to do anything options.
Yeah.
And me being able to prove that you can do something, which is I would consider option selling credit spreads the highest of risk. You can't get higher than selling a credit spread. That is the option's highest risk. That's the top dog, right? And to be able to show consistency and proof of that for me has been a home run. It's a game changer.
Yeah. I think that it also proves that you actually know options trading, because it's easy to try to go trade a stock and use options in place of trading the shares. Um,
Yeah,
and people, I mean, obviously accounts get blown like that. But that
like
doesn't mean that you know what options are. You don't actually understand the instrument that you're trading. And so I think when you're
correct.
able to trade these strategies, you do have to have, an actual knowledge base on them. And
You
did you?
have to have
Yeah.
yes, a fundamental knowledge base because when I fall I do this to my wife a lot. I'll talk to my wife and I talk to her like she's an options trader. And I'll be sitting there saying like, yeah, and then I did this and this and then I was getting stopped out with, one spread, but then she's looking at me like that's great. Like, like I don't know what the fuck you're talking about, but that's great. And I'm
Yeah.
guilty of doing that to a lot of people, but that just proves to you that you need to have a base coding of knowledge before you dive into this world because just the acronyms alone, you can get lost for
Yeah.
weeks in
Yeah.
this industry and the way that everyone shorthands everything now. So, yeah, I think it's very very important that you have that fundamental like at least know the instruments that you're putting your money into like the definitions. Dude, know something.
Right. And that kind of goes into the next question I was going to ask you is, do you think, the importance of having a basis foundation in knowing how to trade overall? Like, do you need to know how to trade stocks before you go in to options, or is it something for you that's easy to integrate together?
It's a totally different world, right? You buy an underlying stock, and if it, it goes up, it goes up, it goes down, it goes down. You buy more, you might get a dividend. You're subjective to any unforeseen news, earning reports 4 times a year, and things like that. So options is a totally different monster when you're adding time value, right?
Yeah.
Stocks are forever. Options have a time value, have a theta decay, so I think that it's two completely different worlds. And I think that you can trade equities with options knowledge, but you cannot trade options with equities knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
I think you need to learn both individually and really dive in.
Yeah. I think that there's a lot of basis in knowing the fundamentals of like price movement, things like that when you're
Yeah.
trying to trade options, especially with single leg strategies. But yeah, theta decay and IV, those will teach you lessons quick. Oh man.
I I love, and it happens to every one of us. You woke up one morning, you bought calls on a stock, and it was up 50 cents green, and you think you're going to be green, and you wake up and you're down 40% on your call options, and you're like,
Or
"What's
not
this?
even.
What's this?"
Yeah, it
Yeah.
can happen in seconds. I've seen, especially if you trade them on runners, you can just,
Yep.
your premium is just gone, never to recover.
Just gets burned now. Theta has an interesting curve, right? So theta, especially on zero DTs, the closer we get to the expiration date, theta rapidly expand. It goes faster and harder into the stock price when you're out of the money.
Hmm.
Um, Theta has an interesting curve when you go on a zero DT. So it starts off the day, like if this is market open, it starts off kind of flat. But then as you get towards lunch, it starts really racing your contracts down. But
Hmm.
from like 3:30 to 4, a lot of people think, oh, theta is going to crush your contract, but it actually flattens back out again. And so you really, that middle portion that a lot of people spend in these contracts is unnecessary. You know how
Hmm.
many times as an option seller, I've seen a contract go from 100% gains back to zero in minutes. And it's just a patience thing. It's a different style thing. But there's one thing I learned option selling that I love options buying now. If I were to ever jump back into it, I would do it so much less. I would trade so much less and choose the pockets where I know those instruments like theta and such would benefit me the most.
Yeah. My one of the things that I really like to do is catch a trade where I trade the push in IV, that nice little jump in premium, and then just sell
ER
out
run up.
at that
Yep.
IV, that
Yeah.
IV push for sure.
And I love to do the opposite. Find me
Yeah,
a fat 200% IV,
there
and
you go.
here you go. You want calls? You want calls? I'm handing them out.
Yeah.
IV, the ER IV run up is one of my favorite strategies when I used to buy options. I used to wait about 3 or 4 weeks for big tech to report earnings, and I
Mhm.
would start buying deep out of the money calls.
Yeah.
Deep out of the money. I mean, 20, $30 out of the money. And then come the day before or the day of earnings, I would be profitable 40, 50% on contracts that the stock price didn't even move.
Yeah.
Sometimes it would go down and I would make money. And that IV run up is such a sweet way. If you know a major report's coming, you can use it to your advantage.
Yeah.
But for some reason, people like to the mindset of gambling and the degeneracy in this market and retail trading. They're just like, fuck it, I'm gonna hold it through, and we're gonna
Yeah.
go for a big yeah.
Yeah, see, that's the thing. Trading earnings is dangerous because if you're not, especially if you're buying, like you just said, you're doing it or you were doing it 3 to 4 weeks out. But a lot of people try to buy them the week of, and they are buying that inflated IV and then get
Yeah.
demolished the next day.
Yeah. Trading earnings reports are 50-50 gambling, and they always will be. I've
Exactly.
seen everything. I've seen the worst earnings reports in human history. We're going bankrupt in 3 months. Everything's dog shit. We're going down. Stocks up 30%.
Yep.
And I've seen the vice versa. I've seen everything and anything you could think of, and I've lost probably 6 figures on my earlier gambling on ER days. So I'm speaking from experience that it's always just going to be gambling.
Yeah, I agree. I agree
Yeah.
completely. When
Yeah.
you go ahead.
No, no, no. Good.
I was going to ask when you are doing your longer term trades, your longer term options trades, do you ever try to trade based just on volatility with the selling side as far as like market wide movement or even on individual names, or do you just kind of keep that for when you're buying options?
Based on just the implied volatility alone, I do sell options.
Okay.
That's actually a very good question. That's a in-depth question that a lot of people probably don't realize. IV is one of the determining factors on how I will sell or a stock I choose to sell credit spread, not credit spreads, cash secured puts and covered calls on.
Hmm.
I do look for individual name stocks that carry a higher IV. I absolutely do. So the stocks that you can that were let's just say Mara, the cryptocurrency stock, right? MARA. That's a good one. It's a favorite in almost every brokerage when it comes to volume, volatility, and traders jumping in on it.
Yeah.
The Mara trades almost at a 3 or 4x normal stocks IV. So being able to sell options on it, you're getting what? 3 or 4x inflated premiums. I
Hmm.
kind of find it's like a markup deal. You know, I'm getting the same amount that I would have paid 3 months ago, but now it's 4x. So for
Yeah.
someone for like me, I'm like, I'm getting a bonus. Thank you for the Christmas bonus. You
Right.
know, so absolutely. That's a really good question. Yes, IV does play a very important factor of to which determine where to sell and what strategy to use.
And with a stock like Mara, when you are say doing the covered call strategy, are you using the cash secured puts to buy your shares, or are you just buying them straight so that you're not paying that inflated premium before you're selling the covered calls on them?
I do not discriminate in my
Okay.
stock entries. So I will use multiple methods to enter a stock based on how the stock is presenting itself. Sometimes I will just sell a cash secured put if it's at a major support level. You gonna this is where you start incorporating the second thing I use to choose stock, and that's the technical analysis, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
if it's at a major support level, selling a cash secured put, I might not get the entry that I want. Because if the intention is to enter the stock, a cash secured put, it might bounce right there. I might not get entry. I might get a nice little paycheck that was easy, but that's not what I wanted. I want to enter the stock.
Right.
So being able to do a call, a buy right or a covered stock, just buy the stock and immediately sell a covered call for downside protection. That's one method that I could enter. You could sell deep in the money calls and then exercise them. That's one way to enter, right? You could do a poor man's covered call, or you could sell a put side credit spread with a wide legged delta hedge. You know, so you can get creative and option selling world, very creative, especially when it comes to entering stocks. I don't discriminate. I've used them all,
Yeah.
but I find now that my favorite thing to do to enter a stock, no matter what, is to just buy 100 shares of whatever it may be, or whatever, however much I'm going to size, and immediately sell a covered call at the money.
Mm-hmm.
And that provides me with downside protection. That provides me with a nice premium. That provides me with everything I need. And if it goes up and I miss the train a little bit, I could still get creative in a way that I want to hold the stock long term, or possibly just let it go and be like, you know what, I made 500 bucks like in 4 days, then I'm cool with that.
Right. Now,
Yeah.
I know you mentioned technical analysis, but with your, long-term portfolio, do you take into account a lot of fundamental analysis too? And how has it
On my
been
long term
learning that?
portfolio,
Mm-hmm.
it's another jam up question. I feel like you've studied shit. I feel like
Well,
you
I,
know.
I've traded a little bit.
Yeah. I feel like you know what I'm gonna say when you ask the question, and they're like, very well prepped,
Oh,
Miss
thank you.
Trader Chick.
Thank you.
Very well prepped. Yeah. Yes, fundamental analysis is a huge part of my long-term portfolio. Everything I do, and I use option selling strategies. But let's just say you have a fundamentally sound. I'm very open about my favorite and my longest position and my largest is a stock called NextEra Energy, NEE, Florida Power and Lighting, which some of us know very well if
Right.
we're South Floridians. Florida Power and Lighting's parent company is NEE, NextEra Energy, and it's my largest holding in my long term. Not only do I sell covered calls on it, but I sell 6 month cash secured puts on it every 6 months because I'm like, okay, you know what? If this thing drops from 55 to 42, I want to get in at 42. So I sell 6 months rotating, and I do covered calls on it quarterlies. So doing the fundamental deep dives on some of these companies and understanding the price points at which they are undervalued, right? Then they become very targeted stocks for me. Like, well, and a good way to measure this is when they have their earnings reports. A lot of people, one thing that retail traders don't understand is a stock's price can go up. Like, let's just say a perfect example was Meta, Facebook, right? Facebook, as we speak, I don't even know. Hold on, let me just see real quick. What is Meta's price at? It's $465 right now, right? Insane. This is a stock that was $90 last year.
Yeah.
But people think that I'll never buy Meta at 400, right? But based on the earnings that they brought out the last 2 quarters, it was undervalued now at 300. So
Hmm.
465 actually made a little more sense. And that's something that the fundamentals that people don't deep dive into is that just because a stock is $90 and undervalued is not the same as when the company is undervalued at 300, saying that they're going to be worth much more. So that's where understanding and knowing the fundamental red flags of a company, which is a YouTube video I put out, can help you choose long term and how to sell options long term against those stocks.
Okay. I like that you mentioned that you have a YouTube video for that because I feel like a lot of times with fundamental analysis, I mean, and with technical analysis too, let's be honest, it can be like trying to read Chinese for the first time if you don't know Chinese.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
you are just like, what does any of this mean? It can be
Oh
overwhelming
yeah.
if you don't know the jargon. So, and another thing that you mentioned is, talking about it's undervalued at this price and it can be worth this. And words like that tell me that you're seeing points for guidance, which is really, I feel like, what fuels that market movement. It's not necessarily the numbers that are put up, it is the overall feeling, the reaction to what is
Yeah.
announced.
Yeah, that's something that a lot of traders don't understand. What's the number one you thing when people post like earnings? What do they post? They post the EPS and the revenue,
Right.
right? Like that. Nobody gives a shit about the EPS or the revenue,
Yeah.
right? That guidance, like you just said, you nailed it on the head. That guidance, the outlook, where we're going to be in a year, like, and when they use confident words like, "Hey, we're not only do we see this level of growth in the next 12 months, we might actually have to raise it again in
Yeah.
6 months." That is like money signs to institutions when they hear that. And
Hmm.
now that Meta added that dividend, I mean things like that, adding a dividend, institutional investors are going to be like, load the boat for the next 3 years
Yeah.
because it's going to just pour in so much money. So you nailed that one right on the head.
So with reports that come out with words like that, it can help with your long-term portfolio, but do you also use that for short-term trading? I mean, I know you don't really trade earnings that much, but you can kind of
I
get a
stay
gauge of
away. Yeah.
how the market's going to react, so you can kind of use it in both, right?
Yeah, I don't use it for my short-term trading.
Mhm.
My short-term trading, I mostly 99.9% of the time only do on cash settled indexes like SPX,
Okay.
because of the margin requirements needed for individual stock. And then you don't want to deal with margin in my world. Like you need a margin account to trade spreads, but use a cash settled instrument so it takes that margin aspect away, right? It's like
Mhm.
it's one of the tools that I use, and I don't trade individual stock on my short term, only SPX. So there is no shares in my world or anything like that. But long
Gotcha.
term, you're damn right. I have Meta in my long term, and I
Yeah.
have it at $120, and I bought more at $200, and I bought more at $300,
And then you're
and
selling
scaling
covered
it.
calls on it?
And I haven't sold cover calls on it yet
Oh,
because I
okay.
don't have enough shares.
Ah.
I only have about 80 shares. So once I grow to the 100 share mark of Meta, then yeah, definitely going to be my largest portfolio positions all have cover calls on them.
Oh, okay. Did you see that they are changing in May to a T1 settlement, though? So everything's going to settle the next business day instead of us having to wait 2 business days.
I
So
did
that'll be
not.
nice.
And who is they? Are you talking about
Every
individual brokerage
No, no, no. The
or every?
entire, yeah. It's a market wide change that's being implemented. I think through the SEC, but all the brokerages.
Oh wow. No,
Yeah,
that's gonna be a huge benefit to people, especially those with small accounts,
yeah,
that have suffer with PDT restrictions and not having to be on a cash account waiting for those settlements. Everything being settled the next day is huge.
yeah, yeah. That'll be
Yeah,
awesome.
it's gonna be nice.
I
It'll
want
be
to
nice for
ask
them.
you, what is the biggest struggle or hurdle that you've had to overcome in trading?
The biggest struggle and hurdle,
Hmm.
personally or like trading wise?
Well, honestly, it can be either. I think that our personal lives and our trading intermingle way more than we even realize. So either the
Oh
biggest
yeah.
thing that you've had to overcome, or maybe still struggle with, in all of this.
Yeah, the biggest thing for me to overcome always was probably when I had to switch from my gambling mentality, then you have to switch to your like switching your mindset and not having fundamental bias for me was very tough when I first started trading. Like, the market's fucking red 7 days in a row, so it can't be eight, and then things like that. And I would put a lot of money down on the can't be eight. And I would have no reason to say that at all. It was just my own personal opinion. And I
Mm-hmm.
think for me, that was the largest struggle that I had when was the first few years. My opinion trumped anything else. It was didn't matter what the chart says, didn't matter what the report said, didn't matter anything. I think it's going to be red, and since I think it's going to be red, I'm buying puts net open. And by 12 o'clock, I'm down $7,000 or $8,000. And thank you, Max, like for doing that. And I used to do that all the time, and I was like, why do I keep doing this shit? Like literally, I would just go on like a news report or Twitter and be like, "Oh, they're talking shit about Roku. I'm gonna short Roku today. It's got to go down. Look at all this shit that people are talking." And I wouldn't know anything else, and then I would just watch it explode that day, and be like, so getting
Yeah.
over my own ego. Like I feel like the best traders, you really have to kind of experience some sort of ego death. You
Okay.
really have to be able to just put, like you said, it's the most individual career in the world. It's self knowing. The more I know me, the more successful I can be at trading. And you have to really just kind of experience that. My opinion don't mean shit.
Yeah.
That ego death.
I,
Yeah.
I feel like through trading, you get to know yourself in a whole like new depth that you never did before. That's for sure.
Yeah.
How did
100%.
you how did you overcome that? What steps did you take to kind of like, get out of your own way?
Well, I will tell you that you don't learn really a lot when you're winning. But my losses,
By getting
I
your ass
have
kicked.
taken ass whooped. I mean, 30,000 on Amazon, gone. 20,000 on an earnings report. And not even like a fun stock like Tesla, like fucking Costco. Like I'm going all in 20 grand on fucking Costco. Like seriously, like what are we doing here, Max? Like what's the end game here? Um, I've lost so much money doing stupid shit, very impulsive shit, very like it wasn't something that I was like even loud and proud about. I would just do the secret trade, and I wouldn't even like announce that I was entering a trade because I was like shameful entering these trades.
Hmm.
And I would do that quite often back in the day, and I would lose 20, 30,000 every fucking time. And that was like those are the biggest lessons. And I know, you could say it's cheesy as you want, but you don't learn shit from your successes, you learn them from your failures.
Yeah. But it's not always
Yeah, and nothing.
everyone that can take that loss and choose to learn
And
from it.
100%, 97% of retail traders are going to buy options and fail in their first year and quit.
Yeah.
And it's not the and even it's the long. I've had people that I know for 4 or 5 years that are trading that are still not profitable, but they won't quit. And they probably will get that aha moment. I was very fortunate and very lucky and very persistent, and to build a system and a governing body around that system and make the switch to options selling, which provides me with not just like the data that I need, but like the proof, right? Like the mathematical proof behind the concepts gives me a level of comfortability so I can continue on without having to worry about it. Like you take a loss, who gives a shit? I
Hmm.
just said on another show, like stop losses, right? Like that, it should feel good to set a stop loss, but it should take all that emotion out of it for you because it's like it is what it is at this point. It hits or it doesn't,
Hmm.
and that should be a happy moment.
Okay. So a lot of changing your mindset as to how you look at things, like a loss, like taking a loss.
Like taking a loss, exactly. Earlier on, when you wake up and you see a loss, it's gut wrenching. You're like, "Fuck, I don't want to do this." You go through the entrepreneurial waves of, "I got a high, I'm the man, everything's going good, I'm gonna do this forever, I'm blessed." You're flexing on Twitter, and then you get the lows. I don't want to be in a fucking Discord group anymore. I hate trading. I want to go back to my job. Having no responsibilities is the best. So it comes in waves
Yeah.
for sure. For sure.
Do you think that I know you mentioned a military law enforcement background. Do you think that that background helped you once you realized that you were getting your ass kicked and you realized something needed to change? Did that help you kind of like be able to discipline yourself? Because I feel like that's another thing that can be really hard to
Yeah.
do is like keep yourself in check.
Oh yeah, accountability and integrity for
Yeah.
yourself, right? Self-awareness, self-discipline, self-honesty, like 1,000%. I'm one of the most self-aware people when I'm doing dumb shit. And I always remember the feeling that comes with that dumb shit. And I'm like, don't do that again. Like it didn't feel good. Like, and thinking that I'm going to do the same thing again and get a different result is the definition of crazy, like fucking insanity. So like,
Mm-hmm.
why would I continue to do something like this? So 100%. I learned all that, the army values and everything that they give to you. Cause, and prior to that, my law enforcement background, like, definitely, it gives you a level of awareness that something's not working, change it. Something is working, don't change it.
Mm-hmm.
Make it better.
I wanted to see if there was any piece of advice that you wanted to give for people watching. Anything you want.
A piece of advice. Yeah, hmm, overall advice. I could tell him not to cook bacon with the shirt off. You know what I mean?
I
So you can.
mean, you know, that's a helpful tip. But maybe if they're feeling like, because I've certainly felt this, I felt like, oh, everyone else can get it but me. Why am I the stupid one? Like, what would
You're
you say
not.
is the
And
first good step to really take?
good question. Okay. All right. So like the it's not working for me kind of deal. Like what you need to make being able to pivot is probably the biggest thing, right? Because I mean, I'm a high school dropout. I'm no one special. I'm not a fucking genius. I'm not the most athletic. I'm not the most anything in the room, right? I'm like middle average of everything. So for me to be able to do it, and most people, it's you could say it's the persistency. You could see but what it really is just the adaptability. Like you said before, it's the self awareness. That's what it is. If it's not clicking for you here, move two paces to the right and see if it clicks for you there, right? If you're trying to open up a lock and the lock ain't fucking opening, don't try the same numbers over and over and over again, right? You got to be flexible and be able to rotate and be like just as fluid as the markets.
Yeah.
So, I think, if I had to give someone advice that really wants to trade, especially if options buying, this is one of my favorite lines is like, if options buying isn't working for you, maybe you should try options selling. If option
Yes.
selling doesn't work for you, maybe you should try equities or something a little bit less risk, right? Because if you got the balls to take the risk and go for it, like you're doing the most high risk thing you can do
Yeah.
in option selling. So if you got that, you know what I mean? You got that you can take the shot, but if it's not working, learn how to pivot, learn how to adapt, and learn how to govern and embody the system that you found does work.
Mm-hmm.
And
Actually,
that's what I did.
I just thought of one last thing I wanted to ask you.
Ask
You
me 10 more things.
you are not afraid to call it like it is, which I have profound respect for. Give me
Thank
your
you.
number one red flag of when you run into, traders on social media of knowing they are full of crap versus seeing someone, such as yourself who is sharing some good information.
You can tell who's a shit eater right from the first, like, you're gonna find them. The first red flag from a shit eater is probably like nothing but Lamborghinis and watches on their Instagram page. That's the chotch. I call them a chotch. Everything they think they do is cool, but it's
Yeah.
just like, but people buy into that success shit.
Mm-hmm.
People love it. They
Yeah.
fucking eat it up and they can't get enough of it. And I don't understand why. But you got your Twitter furus and your pumpers all over Twitter, and they're all shit eaters too. You got your scammers from cryptocurrency. So like I'll forever call it how it is. And I've become like this react guy on Instagram and on socials. Like I react to a ton of things in the finance world, especially in my niche of trading. And my initial opinion of people is like 99% correct most of the time. There's the one or two where I misjudged a 30-second clip and maybe I had called someone a shit eater when they weren't, or vice versa. But I will forever, I hate the fact that there's a dark cloud over my profession because of nine dirtbags, right? And it's always like there's nine dirtbags and one good guy.
Mm-hmm.
And that one good guy is tough to pull out of the crowd because you have to shuffle your way through nine photos of rich people that are, everything on the internet to me is fake until you prove to me otherwise.
Yeah.
So that's just the mentality that I've always had. And like, I'm not impressed by your money or your cars or your trading posts don't even impress me because I've seen such good editing, and I've seen such good,
That's true.
I know people personally that are like, will make $1 million from subscriptions, selling products and everything, and don't even have a brokerage open.
Yep.
to I know people that I won't but like I know them that it's a thing, and I'm like, I don't want to be that person.
Yeah.
And that so transparency from the person that you're working with is so important, especially in this field. And that's why I love the fact that I show my P&Ls, I show my brokerage statements, and that brokerage statement matches my log, which matches the exact time I put something out. And there's no fucking falter in my game, right? It's all about, it's not all about looking sexy to me and to some of the legit ones out there. It's more than that. It's about education. It's about actually like providing value to someone's life.
Yeah. So try to find, if all you're seeing is that like surface level, generic sort of flaunting, probably put up your red
Yeah.
flags, try to look for some substance underneath.
Massive red flag. When I go to like someone's social media page, where are we gonna find these people? 90, how many? I mean, it's got to be 100%. We're going on social media and finding them, right? They
Mm-hmm.
popped up on my
Mm-hmm.
feed, or someone else I know followed them, or whatever it may be. Um, and surface level to me, I click on someone's page, I probably go through, I want to see 2 or 3 years worth of photos. I want to see everything. I want to see the change. I want to see the evolution. I want to go through their social media. I don't want to message them, but I just want to like look and form my own initial opinion, which is what I just said was the hardest thing for me to not do in trading, right? But I do it on social media. But you gotta get past that like surface level, because I know people who own brands. You go on Instagram, buy this plant, you look at their plants and you're like, oh my God, this is the best self-watering plant I've ever seen. 200,000 followers. I gotta buy this plant. But you never click to look through why a page with 200,000 followers is only getting 17 likes on each post.
Right.
And it's because they're fluffing up the numbers. They're making it seem right like perception is reality on social media. And a lot of people are too shallow to go past that level of surface to get deep, do a deep dive and find out what's fake and what's not.
Yeah.
And it's a shame. It's not a, it's a fucking, just a shame.
Yeah.
And so I make sure that I, it's my duty to put it out there in the world.
Well, awesome. Thank you so much for speaking with me today and imparting some of your knowledge for everyone.
I appreciate you for having me, and I appreciate you as a trader and a person. And this was a wonderful time.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Want more Trader Babes? Subscribe now and connect with us on social media for exclusive content and access you won't find anywhere else. And we'll see you right here on the next unforgettable episode of Trader Babes.